All right. Well, thank you for being with us today, Tricia. This is a very exciting time for us to have a conversation. There's a lot going on out there in your world. So thank you for being here. Today, I'm joined by Tricia Rodewald, who is the head of marketing, started off as director and is now the VP of marketing at REGENESIS and has been there for just over 7 years, for quite some time. So thank you for joining us, Tricia.
Thank you for having me, Ken. It's my pleasure.
Yeah.
So as the Vice President of Marketing, I have a lot of hats that I'm juggling, or balls, if you will. And we have a number of divisions that we have to support. We have a small team, so I do a lot of outsourcing and a lot of hands-on work. So I'm not afraid to bootstrap it, but it's been quite a journey, if I if I could share.
Sure.
A lot of adventures, a lot of travel, but I've loved every single minute. It's been great.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I know that REGENESIS is based up in South Orange County in San Clemente. Tell us a little bit about what REGENESIS does as a business.
REGENESIS is the world's leader in situ technologies. A lot of people, didn't know what in situ means. So for lay people that are not familiar with what that is, it's basically treating groundwater beneath the surface. So there's rivers that flow beneath the surface, and most of our water resources come from groundwater. And unfortunately, a lot of that groundwater is contaminated based on historic industrial manufacturing and different activities that have gone on throughout the years that have leached into the groundwater and make it not drinkable and not usable for communities. So REGENESIS has created these technologies that actually clean up the groundwater and make it so that our groundwater is safe and good to use.
Interesting. Well, I mean, there's obviously so much talk now, especially in California, but also just the western part of the U.S. in general, with this crazy, many multi-year drought going on, which doesn't seem like it's going to abate anytime soon. But it must be interesting to have to deal with it across state lines. And where does the contamination start from, and then where does it flow to? I can only imagine the complexities with that.
It's who knew that dirt and water could be so complicated. I've been in, I think, 6 different industries throughout my career, and this is by far the most complicated and challenging as far as the learning curve for me, because I don't really have a science background. But I can definitely talk the talk now after 7 years of intensive on the ground experience of being with PhD scientists that are developing these technologies. So it's been a great learning experience, but it's also been a tremendous honor to work side by side by some of the most incredibly brilliant people I've ever met.
And that must be just incredible, as you said, from day to day, having that kind of just collective brain power around you, and probably challenges you quite a bit to have to step up to that level. I mean, obviously, I'm nowhere near the science expert that I'm sure your colleagues are as well, but that must be fascinating to learn from them on a daily basis.
It really is. Every day is new, and I'm so lucky that they've entrusted me with their brand and spreading the word about the great work that they're doing. It's also gratifying to come home and tell my family that I'm no longer part of an industry that's polluting the environment. I'm actually part of an industry that is helping to heal the earth and make it a better place. So
that's great. I love that. Yeah, I remember when my kids were younger, and now they're 20 and 25. But when they were younger, and I've been recruiting for a long time, and I would come home from the office and say, did you help someone get a job today? Right, same kind of thing, where you feel so fulfilled by what you're doing because you're contributing to something that's for the greater good versus the opposite. So you've been out there for 7 years, like you said. You didn't come from a science background or even from this industry in particular. Tell us about how your role has evolved over those 7 years on the marketing side.
Well, they definitely won't let me present still. Let's just be clear about that. But I'm very adept at finding opportunities for our scientists to be put out there and spread the word. So the way that things have evolved is just the growth of the industry and the concern people have, communities, I'm sure within your own community, that you're much more aware of environmental factors that are impacting your daily lives. So with that said, there's more effort, there's more focus with the Biden administration having a greater emphasis on cleaning up the environment. There's just more opportunity for REGENESIS to make an impact with the great technologies that we have. So it's been an evolution. We have another division that does vapor intrusion mitigation, which allows, especially during the pandemic, people are very concerned about indoor air quality. It allows you to have no fear or risk for indoor air quality with perhaps a brownfield site that had been used for industrial use and now is maybe a daycare or a senior center or something like that, where you have to ensure that the occupants and tenants have a safe environment to work and to play and to live their lives. So having that additional division of vapor barrier systems is also interesting to me, and another yet new thing for us to figure out on how to market and promote so that people have good options out there.
Now, given that I'm not an expert in the industry by any stretch, is it two separate businesses that will identify the soil that's contaminated compared to the one that actually does the cleanup once it has been identified, or do you do both?
We actually work with consultants. Our consultant partners do what's called phase 1 and phase 2 assessments. So they go out and figure out what's going on. And then they usually come to us and we work with them in a collaboration of creating a design that would effectively mitigate the contaminants that are on site. So it's definitely a tight, cohesive collaboration, but we don't take on phase 1 and phase 2. That's really not our space. We do apply our products with our REGENESIS services team. So we do have that piece of it, but usually it's under the oversight of a consultant. And that's driven by a property owner making a real estate sale or the government coming in with a Superfund site that they need to clean up. There's usually those kind of driving factors, whether it be regulatory or real estate, making sure that site is clean for the future.
Interesting. Wow, that's incredible. I think one of the things I love about being in the recruiting business is that I learn about so many industries that I would otherwise have, superficial, if any, knowledge of at all. But from a marketing perspective, so again, when I think about marketing, I think about consumer brands or electronics or software or technology or apparel, right? Tell us about what marketing is like in an organization that's focused around soil contamination cleanup.
There's really a number of prongs to it. So there's different messages for different parts of the industry. So from a real estate perspective, people want to save time and money. So my focus is going to be on explaining to them how cleaning up their site effectively, being one and done, is going to save them time and money. From a consultant side, they need to make sure that approach is something that will be long lasting and will eliminate the risk. So there's a different conversation that you're going to have with a consultant, and it's going to be much more technical, much more deep, what we call blue, where it's a linear discussion versus what we call red discussion, where you're hitting straight to the chase and saying, listen, here's the pile of money that you're going to save, and let's get going. So it's different. It's the same information, but it's packaged in a different way. And we do a really good job of segmenting out those messages. And we do a lot of database work on very targeted messaging. We got deep into what's called ABM, account-based marketing, and coming up with messages that are very specific to that client base, so that it resonates and it meets them where they're at.
And speaking of that, of kind of the different types of clients or customers that you're working with, have you noticed over the 7 years that you've been there, has there been a change in the way those buyers buy, or kind of what they expect from you as a consultant, as that highly revered, if you will, highly respected partner on the projects?
Well, I would be remiss in not mentioning the pandemic. I think
Sure.
we've all lost 3 years of our lives.
Right.
But with that, we had to turn on a dime because our nothing went away. So contaminants were still there. We still had to do something about it. We still had to get the job done. But we had to change the way we communicated with our clients. So we really put a strong emphasis on digital marketing, did a lot of virtual meetings. Our webinar series is industry known.
Oh,
We
wow.
have anywhere from 1,000 to 2,500 people showing up for our webinars.
That's amazing.
So
Now, were you doing webinars pre-pandemic, or is that something you've just started?
we were, and they were
Okay.
popular, but we broke the internet on our first pandemic webinar. We had to change our platform and our system
Oh,
based
wow.
on the response. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but
That's
it was
amazing. Wow.
not the best day when it
Yeah.
happened.
Right.
Um,
A
but
victim of your own success, as they say.
basically, so we changed
Wow.
our approach in the way that we were doing things, but we continue to get great engagement on our webinars, and we've kind of led the industry because now everyone is followed on and doing their own webinars, but we still it hasn't really impacted our attendance and our engagement. So I'm pretty proud of that, and we are able to attract some very high level industry leaders. We just finished a US EPA webinar recording that will be airing September 8th.
Hmm.
And that is the National Brownfields EPA director. And then there's some regional folks that also joined to talk about grant funding.
Oh,
So we
wow.
try and come up with topics that are relevant, that are of value, because otherwise there's no point in doing it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and you mentioned the EPA as well. I know that there's, as you said before, there's a lot of activity happening out there with a heavier focus and concentration on cleaning different sites up. Well, I would imagine you probably get involved with some of the PR there too, but tell us about what you're seeing from that perspective from the EPA side.
Well, the Biden administration has really embraced the idea of the environment and cleaning things up, and positioning Michael Regan as the director of the EPA was great for us because it has a huge emphasis on PFAS, because he's coming out of North Carolina, and with our plume stop technologies that address and mitigate PFAS risk, we're really well positioned because it truly is the most cost effective approach with all that's going on in the industry. As far as the EPA is concerned, they're very neutral, so you have to be very careful. They're never going to take a side, but I feel like them just agreeing to present on our platform has elevated, again, our position in the industry and our position with their people, that they trust us to put out a neutral but very informative talk on what they have to offer.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, I would imagine that as you've hired people in your team or as folks around you, other departments have hired, that those communication skills have become so much more important. Not that they were ever unimportant, but probably even more important these days because so much more is done virtually. Have you seen a shift in terms of how important softer skills are when it comes to hiring?
That's a really good point. Our executive team just went through something called positive intelligence. I don't know if you're familiar with, but Shirzad, can't remember his last name. I'd have to get back to you on his last name.
Sure.
Is a Stanford researcher that has gone through basically ways to create and reduce your stress level and create better communication between teams. And our team just went through that training, and it's been incredibly helpful. And the fact that our organization has put some value on these soft skills, I think really tells a lot about our leadership and what they find important. And the mental health and the well-being of our team, I think, is really been put front and center with all that's been going on. And there's a lot more kindness and empathy, I think, of where people are at.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that has really evolved. We're still a hard driving team. We still
Sure.
like to play to win. Um, and I'm very competitive, so don't put me out on a tennis court. But because I've hurt myself. It's not that I will, it's not that you'll lose, but I'll get hurt.
You'll go all out no matter what.
Yeah, I just can't not run after a ball.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, emotional intelligence and that it factor really is important as far as getting things done and collaborating and making sure that it's a positive win-win experience for both parties.
Yeah, definitely.
I
Well,
don't
no,
know.
that's one of the big things that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if that answered your question or
No,
not.
definitely. Yeah, that's great. But I was gonna say that, you know, that communication and that culture fit, and making sure that you know have that balance is has always been a big part of what we do when we work with clients to recruit people for the role, especially for leadership roles, you know, like the role that you're in now as well, where the hard technical skills are one thing, but the soft skills are, you know, equally important, sometimes even more important, right? Because you can, to some extent, you can train the hard skills. You can't teach somebody, you know, later on in life to become empathetic all of a sudden, or to work with other departments and be more collaborative and break down silos, those kinds of things. Can you talk a little bit about your experience working with us on the recruiting side when we were working with you to land the job there at REGENESIS, and just kind of the experience there?
That's a great question, and I was thinking about it before we jumped on because it really is a partnership and a true collaboration. I mean, the fact that you and the team, Danielle, was so amazing at holding my hand throughout the whole process and really positioning me well to to be my best self in front of
Mm-hmm.
my potential employer. That was invaluable. But what I find truly valuable is that you were able to place me in an environment that was so perfect for where I was at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and continue to grow in that position. I think that's incredibly unique from a recruiting standpoint because sometimes it wasn't just to try and fill a position.
Right.
It was bringing all of my experience and understanding the value of that experience into that negotiation between REGENESIS and us as a team, and understanding kind of what that could potentially represent
Mm-hmm.
for all the parties. It
Right.
wasn't just about, finding a body and filling a seat. It
Mm-hmm.
was truly a collaboration. And I am so grateful. I had the best experience. And you continue to follow up with me, which is so kind. I mean, you don't, there's nothing to be gained by that other than goodwill, and I will always have goodwill
Yeah.
toward you and the
Great.
team and the experience that I had. So um, I can't say enough good things, I guess.
Well, thank you. That's wonderful. Well, and that's why we're here 7 years later, you know, talking, and you're still in the same company doing a great job, right? Because it's not about putting a square peg in a round hole or just trying to fill a seat and make a commission, right? It's about that longer term relationship. And it can be tough. I mean, it's tough for you, I'm sure, in your organization, and for us to, it's a very intangible thing to be able to press upon people the importance, whether you're a candidate looking for the job and making sure that you're partnering with the right kind of firm, or with us making sure that we're talking to the right kinds of candidates that are open-minded and clients as well. So thank you. Really appreciate that feedback. It's been great for sure.
I,
Well,
one thing I didn't mention is that I had a very unique background.
mhm.
I wasn't the obvious choice for the position. And the fact that you were able to see that and to see how those different experiences that I had throughout my career could complement what the team was looking for, I think was also a gift.
Mhm.
Because you could have said, you could have been very literal in looking at my experience and said, you have no environmental industry experience. You don't have a master's in hydrogeology. Not work. Um, and I think that would have been a big mistake because
Yeah.
I'm coming at this as I often put myself in our clients' shoes and say, I have no idea what you're talking about, but explain to me how that's going to save me some time and money.
Right, exactly.
And I think that conversation wouldn't happen if someone with a background like mine wasn't in the conversation, wasn't at the table having that
Right.
that discussion and bringing those points up. Because
Mhm.
if you worked with engineers, you know that it's all about that widget that they've created that is so amazing,
Exactly.
but it doesn't translate to why I should care about your widget. You
No,
know,
you're right, exactly. Well, I think that's one of the things we talk about with clients also. Every client comes to us and initially says we have to have someone from our industry. And then we talk to them about, well, let's talk about why. Is that really necessary? What's the makeup of your team right now? Like you said, if the company is already comprised of, numerous scientists or engineers or technicians, that's important for sure. But then everybody's coming at a problem. They're coming to the problem with the same perspective, the same ideas, and the same experience. But someone that comes from outside the industry is going to have a whole different, idea and look at it through a whole different lens. And then you avoid that groupthink, and that's the way you can be truly innovative as an organization, in my opinion, for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that you sharing those comments and everything, and congratulations on 7 years out there.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to the next 7, and we'll definitely continue to
I'm
stay.
hoping. Yeah,
Yes, right. Fingers crossed for all of us, right?
for sure.
All right, great. Well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.